Have you ever felt the weight of grief so heavy that the world expected you to move on while inside you were still breaking? My guest today, Chris Mamone, has lived that reality. After watching his grandfather take his last breath in 2020, losing his firstborn son to stillbirth in 2022, and facing multiple job losses and a cross country move, Chris was forced to reinvent himself from the ground up. Out of that pain, he created the Empowered Grief Journey podcast because grief chose him and he chose to meet it. Today, we'll explore how grief, when embraced instead of silenced, can become not just a wound, but a powerful path of transformation and awakening. Now, before we dive in, if you're here because you're seeking truth, healing, and transformation, make sure to subscribe and share this episode with someone who's ready for their own awakening. Every conversation here is meant to inspire your journey and remind you you're not alone. Welcome, Chris. Hi.
Thanks for having me on today, Carolyn.
Absolutely. Definitely. I've been so looking forward to this conversation for a while now, so I'm really excited about this. So yeah, we'll just dive into the first question. Can you go a little deeper into the trauma you experienced and how your personal healing journey got you where you are today and into the work you do?
So I have had a very unusual life path. Is what most people that know me, that's what they've said about me, and I couldn't agree more.
Yeah.
I have had a life filled with job loss of every array of things. I have gone through multiple experiences of narcissistic abuse with certain people in the workplace and family. I've also watched my grandfather pass away from terminal cancer, and the one that really broke the camel's back for me was losing my child to stillbirth the day before he's supposed to be born. That one really took the icing on the cake, if you will. And
Yeah.
so, I will share, I took a lot of those past circumstances before losing my son, Caden. It's just, that's what life deals you, and you got to learn how to move forward with it. I came to find out when I lost my son that I had just been storing all that trauma for years, and I never really actually dealt with it. I never actually sat down and said how I really felt about it. I never gave myself space because, as the world likes to share with us, you got to move on and get over it and let go, and life happens. And unfortunately, those are all big lies that I wish people would stop listening to.
Absolutely.
Um, and so when I lost my son, I let go of a lot of things personally in my life that was holding me back from that healing process. That's what I let go of. What I did do, though, is dive into those trauma wounds. And it was not fun. It was very hard, very difficult. But I will say that what came out of that is exactly what one of my podcast guests told me. Grief chose you and you chose it. And
Hmm.
I said, I didn't want to, but that's the card that got dealt for me. So I learned how to come to this place of acceptance. That's why I call myself an acceptance coach, is that you don't always have to like it and you don't have to agree to it, but the best way for you to start that healing process is to accept it and stop denying your reality. And that's a really, really, really hard journey. I want to preface it's not something that is going to happen in a day or a week or a month. It's going to take a lot of time to get to that place. But when you do, I will share that I personally found a lot of growth opportunities in my journey, and I'm now a coach in the grief space. 5 years ago, if you asked me if I would be there, I would have laughed at you and said no. Today, I'm in that space, and it's a very rewarding place to where I've been. And I paid a very heavy cost to get where I am today in a lot of ways. But at the same time, I'm able to help people go through very deeply emotional grief, loss, and trauma events in their life. And to get them to see the hidden gifts, lessons, or blessings in those moments, because we all are teachers after going through grief. All of us are. And I think that empowering people to go out there and help others through that,
Hmm.
it's one of the most beautiful gifts you can see through that experience.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought up that whole teacher thing because I've been experiencing grief fully since 2018 when my mother died, and I had a similar experience where it opened it up like yours. It was like this thing that opened it up. And it took me down, and I'm sure you can attest to this. It's like this wavy, crazy circular, like here we go in and then out and then all these places. And we learn a lot about grief, and we learn a lot about what grief really means and what it does and why it's there. I mean, it's not, we don't get like the same thing with certain body parts. We weren't given these body parts just because, so emotions and feelings and grief, especially, we're given this. It's a gift. So we can, because as much as you love, that's how much you grieve. Those two things are inseparable. So, what would you have to say? Because I wanted to bring something up about your son, which I feel is very important. And we've talked about this before, but what would you say about that inseparability between grief and love? I'm curious.
I think, what I've heard from people, I've interviewed over 96 people on my podcast, and something that I've come to learn from people about grief is
Yeah.
it's always love in disguise.
Yeah.
That's really the best way I could say it. Grief is not, it's hard for me to ramble through this a little bit, but basically, grief is something that society views as like, don't talk about it, it's negative, or don't talk about it, it's not helpful, or don't talk about it because it makes me uncomfortable.
Mm-hmm.
Well, the reason it makes everybody uncomfortable is that it's a very powerful affirmation of love in your life, is what it is. Um, and I'll share something really personal. When I held my son for the first time in the delivery room that night, I don't know what swept over me, but I felt like a curtain got put up around my wife and I literally felt like everything outside that curtain didn't even exist at that point.
Mm-hmm.
It was just my wife, my son, and I felt this very overwhelmingly huge sense of love for my kid. I don't even know how or why to really explain it, but I felt that a lot.
Yeah.
And uh, I was sad that he was passed away. I was very, very sad about that. It's to see a newborn child that never got to even touch the world,
Mm-hmm.
not even have a chance. That's hard. Um, but he really brought out a side of me that I never knew I even had. And
Yeah.
so I can sit here and say, yes, that was very traumatic. And yes, it was very sad. I can say those things, but I can also say that he gave me the most powerful gift of love in that grief moment that I'll never get again. And it was something that I'll never forget because of how powerful it was.
Yeah.
So I share this because everybody I talk to that has either lost a mom, lost a dad, lost a sister, lost a pet, lost a job, lost a relationship, lost a marriage, it happens all over life. And what a lot of people I wish would see is this is not some terrible, tragic thing that happened to you. That's a part of it, and I'll
Mm-hmm.
acknowledge that. But I will also say that you loved something deep enough in your life, and when it got taken away from you without maybe even warranting it, that it just left your life without cause, you're gonna grieve that. It's gonna hurt. And
Mm-hmm.
so understand though that a big portion of that is your love you had for that situation.
Yeah. Yeah. That's wow. I appreciate that. Thank you so much, Chris. And this is I'm glad you said it the way you did, because that kind of brings me into what I wanted to say about your son, Caden. And just mentioning his name is like, it's so important to mention names. There's a gift in there. And the thing about it is that was your gift. It's almost like he gifted you the opportunity, like I believe we pick our experiences in this lifetime, and we make these deals with other souls to help us grow in this life. And all the stuff that we go through, all the loss that we go through, all of the things that we go through are, to me now, not earlier, but to me now, I look back and they were gifts. And like for you and Caden and your wife, and what you've experienced, and as a result of what he's like your guardian angel, he's there with you, not only helping you heal, but helping you share this gift with other people in the world, which is what you're doing. And the fact that you said 96 interviews, that's insane. Now you've been doing this in a good way. You've been doing this since when? 96.
Since the end of February this year.
Oh my gosh. Okay. So I've been working, just to give you an idea, people, I've been working since October on my podcast. And I think at about 40, give or take. I think you're number 42 or something, but I have people lined up behind you. But I just, you're still young, Chris. I'm not old by any means, just saying. But you've got that thing, but you also had that thing, that driving force. Your son, the grief, the things that make you who you are, and how you drive yourself, the drive inside of yourself in this world. And I watch that every day practically. I see you on Facebook and I'm like, holy cow, man, this guy, I mean, I don't know. I don't even have words for it. It's just, I honor you and I commend and whatever. It's just, you've got such a beautiful soul. And especially for what you're doing and what you've experienced and gone through, because the death of a child, especially a newborn, is, I don't know how anybody would go through that. I've had my own experience with loss with my children, but nothing like that. And it's not comparable, really. But because it's the same feelings, the same energy, it's grief. It
Hmm.
shows up that way. And but for you, it's like, man, I honor
Yeah.
that. I wanted to share that with you because it's just such a powerful experience for you to be able to just go through and then share it with people. Not a lot of people can do that. I hope you realize this.
Well, I appreciate you saying that, but one of my reasons why I'm doing what I'm doing is that, uh, men in particular, by the way, and in the lost community of parents are very, very underserved. It is very, very sad to me in a lot of ways because women have all the resources in the world, and I'm not joking when I say that. Women have all the resources in the world when they go through that. And I'm very, very happy, by the way, that that is there, because women have a very different experience than men do in a lot of ways with that. But what is often forgotten about is that it takes two to make a baby. Most people forget that. And men in particular, we're not only fighting going through that circumstance of losing a child, but we're also fighting the stereotypes of society that we don't feel. We know how to be silent, we know how to be angry, but we don't know in between.
Mm-hmm.
And so it really bothers me a lot. I went to a loss event, by the way, and none of us fathers, I wasn't in a place to speak at this event, but none of us talked. It was really interesting. Nobody stepped up. None of the men stepped up and said, I'm sad I lost my kid, or this is really hurtful, or I'm still upset about. Nobody said that. And I sat there watching the women, all talking about their kids and all talking about their experience and connecting. And I saw the men sitting there in silence, not saying anything. And I had this recollection in my head going, I don't want to be that. I don't want to be that because
Yeah.
you lost a kid just like I did. And I always tell people don't compare grief because it's just really not helpful. It's not supportive. It's just not going to help anybody, to be very fair. But what is helpful, by the way, is getting people to open up about their loss and their grief. And
Yeah.
men in particular, I'm on a mission to show men, look, it's okay to cry. It doesn't mean you're weak. It doesn't mean you have a problem. That doesn't mean any of those things. It means you feel, you have a heart. It means that. It means this loss meant something to you. It means that. But you're much, much more than silence and anger. You're much, much more than those things. And something I share on podcasts all the time is the stereotypes we've heard that women are overly emotional and men don't know how to feel. I've broken that thing very consequently to say women are taught how to feel emotions. Women are taught how to express emotions. Women are taught how to understand them. Men are taught silence and anger. We're not taught in between. We're not taught how to feel. And I said, that's the problem. So I said, what if we took the concepts of those stereotypes and threw them out the window and just said the following, that men can learn from women about emotion. Why don't we use the resource in front of us and learn, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then at that point, by the way, if enough men get out of that, tough man thing we've been taught our whole society
Yeah.
lifeline
Yeah.
and learn how to feel, we can teach other men how to feel. And then, by the way, men would not walk around with so many problems or so much anger or so much sadness or so much this. They would express
Right.
themselves in a very healthy way. And so I
Right.
just see I see a lot of opportunity for us is where I'm going with that.
100%. Yeah. And I just mentioned earlier with you, I just did a podcast with Tony Lynch, who his podcast is Grief Let's Talk About It. And his work is with men to help them exactly the way Chris is talking about. And we had such an amazingly deep conversation about that, because one of the things I'd like for people to know, and yeah, there is a little bit of there's a similarity and a difference between how men and women show emotion. And I try really hard not to generalize, because I've also seen women who have the same response as men do, and I've also seen men have responses like women do. So what I'd like to say first is that our programming in how we are taught to uh, emote or not, I don't think we were ever really taught how to do that. You know, I'm a generation ahead of you, and nobody taught us that stuff because nobody knew how to do any of that stuff. But what they did teach was, and I feel very passionate about this, it's like with women, we are set up, at least my generation was, and I'm hoping that it's like moving out of that a little bit, but my generation was set up where sadness actually sits on top of anger. So there's a lot of anger inside because we're expected to be the good little girl and not say anything and just show up nice and pretty. At least that was my experience, you know, with growing up. With men, I noticed it was like anger's here right on top and sadness is underneath. So it's covering up the sadness. And you kind of alluded to that when you were talking, but the challenge with that is when you're taught not to feel your feelings, it crushes you. It causes illness. There's so many things that it does. And with women, we're already, how do I say, it's like we have a gene inside of us or something that gives us the opportunity to emote. But for example, when I did that, when I was going through my healing journey and I would cry, I was crying because I was pissed. I wasn't crying because I was sad. And I could little by little, I could feel that anger coming up, coming up, coming up. And I kept going, nope, 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 I can't, not allowed to get angry, not allowed to get angry, you know, that kind of thing. So with when I watch men, it's like it feels similar. It feels like, you know, you all were taught from my generation and before, well, you can't cry or you're this or you're that, and you're going to show you can't, you got to be tough and you got to do all this stuff. Well, you lose your humanness when you do that. And your humanness and grief and emotions and all that stuff is part of your humanness. So I feel like from time immemorial, I don't even know what the word is, that you've been taught, men have been taught to hold that in because you're supposed to be the protectors of women, but not in that way, because women know how to emote naturally, and you were taught not to emote. So you can't protect women by not doing that. You're actually, there's this, I don't know if the word's congruency or balance or something. I learned this from Native Americans before doing some research. Men protect the women with their physical strength. Women protect men with their emotional strength. So we have that. And if we've been traumatized, we also kind of miscalculate it sometimes, you know? So
Mhm.
for being in this world, at least if we can understand how each of us have been programmed and how each of us are supposed to work, then there's a space in there to have, what did you call yourself? Acceptance, to recognize that there's something different going on here than what we were taught. So what would you like? Would you want to say anything about that or?
Yeah, I can actually build off that quite a bit.
Awesome.
What
Okay.
I want your audience to learn, I'm going to give you guys a great coaching lesson today about this. So, in the world of our society, we have men and we have women. Now, men are masculine energy. They're all about physical strength, protectors. That's men. Women have feminine energy, and feminine energy is the supportive energy. It's the thing that's supposed to support and drive. Now, when those two energies, by the way, are close to equilibrium and they move about this far, everything's in balance. And that's where we're not having a overexertion of one energy over the other. Now, when we have too much feminine energy and not enough masculine energy, things are out of balance. And it goes the same way too. When we have men that have way too much masculine energy going on compared to feminine energy, it's out of balance. And so we
Hmm.
end up in these extremes of things. And, you know, the reason I'm sharing this is because when you think about your behaviors, your belief systems, your convictions, when you think about how you were taught things, we don't always sit back and say, who did we watch to learn this? Who taught us this? We don't ever ask those questions.
Right.
And so, what I have often told people in the coaching space is you took those beliefs on from someone else that told you how to think that way. You didn't actually think that way for yourself. And the example I like to give that's floating around the internet all the time is this concept of these two little kids. There's a black baby and a white baby sitting in a playground, and the conversation around it said racism's a taught thing. It's not a automatic behavior, so to speak. And the reason they say that, by the way, is because when you're a baby, who are you taught by? There's literally who are you taught by? Where do you learn things from, right? You learn it from people you're around, right? So if mom or dad say, think, do, act, or whatever it is in front of you, you say, oh, that's okay. I can think that way. I can say things that way. I can talk that way, believe that way. If you go to school and you build friendships, right, and your friends have an ideology or mindset, you're more likely to take it on. It's called groupthink. Now, the reason I share this is related to grief is that a lot of times you are actually processing grief from a place of learned behavior, not from what you think and believe,
Mhm.
what you've learned and what's been put on you. And
Yeah.
so your frustration and your energy I was talking about, masculine and feminine energy, will go out of whack sometimes because you might have learned about grief from your dad. Now, dad's got a lot of masculine energy in a lot of ways. Now, if it's really high masculine energy, that belief is going to be very different from somebody who's got high feminine energy. It's going to
Mhm.
be very, very different. Now, where we can learn from each other in grief is the following. Ask ourselves a better question. Better questions get us better results. And what I mean by that is this belief I have about grief true? Where did I learn it from? Where did I take it on? Is it my belief? Is it somebody else's belief? When we can get into that place and ask those questions, as hard as they may be in those moments, we might oftentimes find ourselves saying, that's not actually how I believe things. You know, mom or dad believed it, or grandma, grandpa believed it, or my friend so and so believed it. I don't really believe that actually. I actually think different.
Mhm.
That's the place I want to get you to is you think different. I want you over there because that's where you're listening to yourself. You were listening to how you feel, not everybody else or what you've been taught, but how you feel
Mhm.
about something. And that's a big part of why grief is so hard to navigate is because we don't spend time over there where we live and how we feel. We live in those conditioned, learned ideologies and belief systems. And that's where we end up having trauma or we end up having grief for an extended period of time because we're not listening to ourselves. And so, men, for example, with the anger thing, and I've actually come to learn anger, by the way, it's a secondary emotion. You're not angry just because you didn't wake up angry that day. That's a secondary emotion. What's underneath that thing? There's sadness, there's grief, there's hurt, there's pain, there's something driving that anger. And what I'll share with you guys to wrap up my long-winded thing is that when I was making a box for my son's ashes and I got really ticked off and I stepped on a box and crushed my heel, and I was in a boot for 6 weeks. That anger, by the way, had nothing to do with that wood project at all. That anger had nothing to do with that.
Mhm.
What it did have to do with, by the way, is I would wish I wasn't making a box for my kid. I wish my kid was running around the house screaming and causing a nightmare in my life. That's what I wanted. And anger was there.
That's fair.
Anger, anger was there to say, hey, that's what you want, but this is what you get. That's
Right.
what anger was saying is that it's the part of you that loves you the most. And so I try to encourage people using that example of anger, by the way, is that don't listen to people that say you have an anger problem. That's very overrated. You got to ask better questions. You got to say, what's causing me to feel angry and
Right.
what's making me feel this way? And
Right.
get down to that place so we can
Yeah,
actually,
absolutely. Absolutely. And the challenge with our society, and thank goodness that I see little hints that it's getting better. It's like when someone does something, when they have a behavior that's like not doesn't fit in the box, whatever, people always use this question, what's wrong with you?
oof,
Right? And I'm like, okay, so Oprah Winfrey and some psychiatrist that she got together with wrote a book related to this, and it's not about what's wrong with you, it's about what happened to you. And so when you start looking at those different questions and you start questioning those questions in your own life, we all have these voices in our heads that tell us that we're not good enough, that there's something wrong with us, that, all this stuff. And as an adult, what I teach people is that we get to take responsibility for it. When we have these situations, we do get angry, all that stuff. But as a child, and people said those things to you, and it's not true, and you don't know how to respond to that because you were never taught, because the people who were saying that to you are also in that same position and they didn't know how to teach you. So you didn't know what to do. So now you've got all you have is the voices of the parents or the grandparents or whoever was doing whatever, or the teachers or whatever. And then you have this other part of you that is just, it gets stuck in this loop of telling you how, listening to these voices and telling you how stupid you are and telling you that you're not good enough and telling you all these things about how terrible you are. It's all a bunch of bullpocky, and it's lies.
Mhm.
And we grow up with that because that's how we're taught, or that's how we see the world. Like, a lot of times I also talk about how children learn by watching. They don't learn by listening. And you have a hard time trying to teach a kid something. You listen to me right now, and it's like, I'm watching you, you're not doing what you're telling me to do. That's exactly what goes on there. Like, as adults, as
Yeah.
parents, even with the best intentions, we'll tell our children, oh, you got to share your toys with your friends. And I remember I think I saw like a meme or a little video or something about a kid that just says, well, you're always telling me to share my toys with my friends, but I don't see you sharing your toys with your friends. I mean, these kids are smart now, people. It's just awareness. And my generation, as there's an awareness that we can get and understand if we just listen to these children at this point. And to your point with, how you see people with their emotions and everything, I feel like even with emotions, that there are kids out there, young 20 somethings. You're in your mid 30s, right? I think you told me.
I'm a year and a half away from 40.
Oh,
Don't
oh, okay,
remind me.
that's close enough. Sorry. Oh God. Okay, but these kids that are coming in now, these 20 somethings, they, even if they're taught incorrectly how their emotions run, they still have this thing where, because they came into this environment which is so different from mine and yours, because you got to experience my generation. um, they
Yeah.
see things so different. They know how to set boundaries. They know what things feel like to them because their family, I mean, it's been taught enough for when they came in for them to get that. So there's a whole different understanding about that. Okay, so we went off on a little bit of a tangent about that kind of thing, but I want to get back to grief and loss.
Hmm.
So that's what we're here for, right?
This is all related to grief and loss. It really is.
That's
And I
true. That's
and
true.
I, I mean I'll give you guys a real short example too, by the way. I have an in-law family member of mine I'll keep anonymous. But she always had these very, very big emotional outbursts whenever somebody would offend her or she was going through grief. She'd get really emotionally wound up. And for many years I sat there and was going, God, can't you like figure it out, like why you're feeling a certain way or what's causing you to drive? Like, I don't understand this. And then it kind of hit me, by the way, and I had this big breakthrough that I want to share with you guys about grief, by the way. When somebody's having a very big emotional outburst, especially going through grief, when they get very angry or very, very sad or very, very upset in grief in particular, I caught on to this pattern with this individual, and she taught me a big lesson, by the way. There was a moment in your childhood way, way long time ago, somewhere between the age of 4 and 7 years old, somewhere in there, that you had something happen to you that was actually big to you in that moment. And that could be, by the way, somebody took your toy away from you, you disagreed with your parent for whatever reason. Doesn't matter. There was something big enough for you to feel hurt. And that hurt never got resolved, by the way. It sat there subconsciously. Now, when you become an adult, by the way, and you lose a parent, you lose your sister, you lose a pet, whatever it is, that thing triggered that event back here. So the reason you're reacting the way you are today is a result of something that happened back there in childhood. When it gets really elevated, there's something in childhood that happened that you haven't addressed yet and given yourself permission to say, it was okay for me to feel the way I do. When kids, by the way, get upset and they go through their own little grief, which is like, I don't get to play long enough, or I have to go take a nap when I don't want to. What do kids do? They don't say screw you or, F you or whatever. Kids don't say that, right? What do? They cry, right?
Mhm.
They don't understand, right? They say this doesn't make sense or I want this. Listen to what I just said about the child versus adults. The child is coming from a place of emoting. The child's coming from a place of communicating what they want or what they need. They may not always get it, but they're doing that. And when we turn into adults, by the way, those conversations get more drastic and they get more in the way of arguments or fighting or, cussing or swearing or things like that. They get amplified. Now, if we actually took time to understand when we get in those states in grief, there's an inner child within us that's not being seen or heard or understood. And if we were to actually sit there, by the way, and not ask questions like, what's wrong with you or why can't you be normal? Or why can't you get it together? I don't like why questions because they elicit blame.
Mhm.
But if we instead said, what's causing you to feel this way right now? Or what situation brought out these emotions in you? Or is there a situation that happened to you younger in your life that never got resolved with grief? Open up the doors for those things. That grief tonality of things will come right down because you're acknowledging your grief, you're acknowledging what you went through. And that's something that we need to take more time to focus on with people. It's not a problem of why, it's a matter of what and how is where we've got to get.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's exactly right. And I'm gonna throw in something that I learned. I took a trauma informed course a few years ago, and this was very interesting to me. It talks about exactly what you're saying, but most people don't know that this is what happened. So when you have an incident like that as a child, there's a loop. It's a trauma loop basically, and it goes around. All these things are happening, and it comes around to a point. But if you don't know how to emote and you don't emote, so there's a gap. It gets left open if there's no closure, right? So what
Mhm.
happens is as you get older, this gap stays open, and every time something that reminds you, just as Chris was saying, of something that happened as a child, and that's lost. Like, you're taking my toy away, and then that's the child version of, you just took my baby away, you just took my best friend away, you just took something away from me. There's loss. It's going to keep, if you never close that gap, it's going to keep stacking and stacking and stacking on top of each other throughout your life. And that response that your family member had is a result of that continuous stacking on top of each other, because as you were leading to, it was never closed out. There was no closure. There was no um, awareness. There was no acceptance. There was no being seen. There was no being heard. Nothing happened that helped to close that out. So your family member who goes through this, or yourself, if there was no response from somebody when you're little to say, I see you, I hear you, I feel you, I'm here for you. If that doesn't happen, that's why these things happen as we get older, and they get worse and worse and worse, because we had no resolution. And when we have that resolution, we're able to calm ourselves down. We're able to talk to ourselves that way. We're able to reparent ourselves. We're able to, tell ourselves it's okay, everything's going to be okay, or whatever we need to do. That's what I do. I put my hands on my heart and I'm talking to my little girl. It's like, okay, we weren't expecting that one. No, we're going to be okay, that kind of thing. And so it's important to understand that these childhood traumas are what, if we don't resolve them, are what create these reactions when we're adults, because we're basically still being run in this emotion that we never resolved by that little child. Like, I lived my life as a 10-year-old in response to the particular reactions that my little 10-year-old had that was never allowed to close. And so that's where that shows up. I just wanted to give like an idea of what that looks like from that perspective. I feel like you already knew that, but that's just for the audience to understand that. But I'd love you to share, because I feel your energy. I do that.
Mm.
That's just the thing I do. I feel your energy, and I know you are so passionate about raising awareness around grief and loss. Can you go in a little bit about why this is, you are like that. Why are you like that? Why are you so passionate about this?
I'm so passionate about it because, simply put, I have had too many people in my life not hold space or understand it. And I have had so many people in my life tell me to put a mask on, get over it, let go, move on. Uh, I will share with you, when I lost my child, I heard a lot of very unsensitive things in the 3 months after I lost him. And I had, certain family members say things like, well, at least we know you make beautiful babies. And I was like, thank you. That hurts a lot on top of what I'm already dealing with. Don't need to hear that.
Mhm.
I've also had people say, oh, you'll have another one. Don't think about it. Yeah, I can have three, four, five kids. I'll be honest, it doesn't fix the one I lost. I hate to say that. It's not going to fix it. And so, I always heard people saying all these things about trying to fix me or trying to tell me where I should be or what I should do or how I should think or how I should feel. And I got really angry one day over that and kind of lost my crap, so to speak. And I finally sat there and said, I'm done tolerating this. I'm
Mhm.
just done. And
Mhm.
I really, a lot of those people that said things like that are out of my life right now, to be very honest. Now that was a very hard decision to make, by the way, but what came out of that is that when I removed all the hurtful people and I removed all the hurtful things that are said, what did come forward, by the way, was supportive people. What came through was listening to my inner voice of how I feel about grief. I started attracting people that had similar losses. I ran into people that lost children. They said, hey, you don't even have to explain. I get it. I'm here for you. That's what I wanted to hear. My head immediately went from here down to here real quick.
Mhm.
And so I caught on to the fact that when I went through all my grief experiences, I was told to put a mask on and I had to manage other people's emotions. Talk about, by the way, when you lose a kid or you watch somebody die in front of you and you're now having to manage other people's emotions on top of how you feel with grief and what you just went through.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, like, but I'm just gonna call it what it is. That's bullshit. It is. I'm calling it what it is. And I want people to hear that, by the way. You only need to be responsible for you and how you feel and what your experience is. It's not up to you to manage other people's emotions.
Mhm.
And when you're being told to put a mask on, I'm going to be honest with you guys, they're not safe people. Don't be around them while you're grieving. That's the best thing I can tell you. What you do need to do, by the way, is grieve in your own time and grieve in your own way. It's not something you're going to get over. It's not something you're going to let go of. To tell you guys very honestly, I do not like the holidays anymore. The day after Thanksgiving, when I go into stores and all of a sudden the Christmas music's on, little kids are running around grabbing toy, I get triggered like a combat vet with PTSD. I have to walk out of the store. I literally can't handle it.
Mhm.
Um, when I don't have people even acknowledge me on Father's Day, that one really hurts because they assume that my child's passed. So, it's just a thing that happened. There's stuff like that that happens all the time. And so I'm very, very passionate about this topic for a reason that when I have interviewed 96 people on my podcast, I will say the following. Not a single one of them let go of it. Not a single one of them got over it. Not a single one of them puts a mask on. I'm going to tell you guys that right now. What I did see, by the way, and I have talked to people, to give you an example, I've talked to people that have lost more kids than me. I've talked to somebody whose father murdered their mother. I've talked to somebody that's lost people in car accidents. One of the people I know, her daughter was pregnant, got killed in a car accident. I have talked to people in the gamut of grief. And what I've learned, by the way, they never forget their grief. They move forward with it and they carry that grief with them. And these people, by the way, after what I just told you guys, I know some of you are shocked saying, holy crap, kind of thing. These are some of the most beautiful people I have ever met in my entire journey of life. And I've been on the planet 38 short years, but I will say in the last 5 months that I've been recording podcasts, these are the most beautiful people I've ever met. And
Mhm.
they're people that have written books, they're coaches, they're speakers, they're out in their communities, they're serving other people with intention. They talk the same way I do about grief. They hold space for people, they understand. I'm sharing all this with you guys to say the following that grief is tragic. It sucks. It's painful. It's very, very hard to deal with. On top of that, society has it all wrong. Everything you've been told about it, by the way, is a lie. When you recognize that there's something very powerful behind grief, that you're stepping away from who you were to step into who you're becoming, and you become this powerful person now that's out there sharing your story, just like I am. I talk about Caden all the time. It's not because I'm obsessed that I lost my kid. It's because that love is so big. If I hold it in, it causes me pain. When it goes outward, it's doing good justice out in the world.
Mm.
And so I want to share that grief does not have to be the end of your story. It's the beginning of a new one. And it's one where you actually get to go out in the world and help people from a very heart-centered, powerful place. And I will share with you guys, if you lost a kid like I did and you run into a parent who's getting all the hurtful things said to them like I did, and you come along and say, you don't even have to explain, I get you, I see you, I understand you. You have no idea how much that means to somebody. And it's going to be in a way that I can't even put in words today, but that person will love you from a very deep place. So I am encouraging you guys to go there, be there. It's a beautiful place.
I don't think you need to put it into words because I don't know if you can see I'm tearing up here because I feel that from you. There, you don't need words for that. It's just from your description and how I know that. I know that myself from my own story, which, some of my audience knows, but I want to go in a little bit into mine because I want to
Mhm.
share the difference between the type of grief that you went through and a similarity with, what I experienced. But first of all, and I love that quote, that's going in. That's going in something. Grief is not the end of your story. It's the beginning of a new one. I was like, okay, here come the to the waterworks. Anyway, so listen, people, we heal when we're heard. We heal when we are heard. And when people do not, if they just and just be there and hold space for someone who is in grieving, it's a support. When you learn, and some people don't do this intentionally, I've found. It's not just the people that kind of poke at you and, oh, you'll get over it kind of thing. Some people just don't know and they'll be there supporting you and you'll be crying and they're like, oh, don't cry. Well, that's not a good thing either, right? And so one of the things that I learned through experience is in holding space for people who are in grief, don't say anything. Just sit there with them and just, the only thing you need to say is, would you like me to hold you or hold your hand or anything? You let me know. That's it. And they will tell you. And then you just sit there and shut up. Because what they need to do is they need to release. They need to get this out of their nervous system. We need to get this out of our nervous system because if we don't, it creates worse things happening, to include like things like even the law of attraction. If we're holding all this stuff inside of us and it's so much grief, we're going to keep attracting more of it. Do you want that? No. But the point is, when you're with someone else, just support that, hold that space. You don't need to say anything to anyone. And in the case of, like, you said this, you were like, they weren't holding your space, they were just kind of shooting things out at you. That's the reason to not say anything, because you're hurting them more. You're hurting people more who are already in that grief process by doing that. My story, I lost my children, but I did not lose them through death. So for people who are out there in the audience who have experienced parental alienation, they call it family bond obstruction, that sort of thing, that's what I went through with my children. And basically it's um, the custodial parents lying to or not telling the whole truth to the children. So the children, which is not normal, or it's not a natural process of childhood of little kids, they start pushing the other parent out of their life. So I was the parent that was pushed out. And so this has been going on technically now for a little over 26 years. My relationship is reestablished with my son, but I'm still kind of in a place with my daughter because she's just not ready right now. And the thing about it for these parents that I've experienced myself, and I know, is that how do you grieve a child who is still alive? Well, here's how you do it. You consider that as a loss, just like a job, or, I mean, it's not the same, but it's a loss. You lose somebody, you lost your pet, the pet ran away or something, but it hasn't died or something like that. Look at it like it's a loss, and then you can touch that grief and you can bring it to the surface and heal it. That's how I had to do it because I couldn't figure out another way to do it. It's frustrating. So there's so many ways, and that's why I guess we now have all these podcasts of us people talking on these about grief, because there's so many different ways to help people in different situations to do this. And I just wanted to share that because it's such a an important thing to look at, because just like your title, I don't even know what direction you're on when people see this, but your title is an acceptance coach. It's all about accepting this, because if you don't accept
Mhm.
it and you hold on and you're just stuck in that grief, then you're just going to get angrier and angrier and angrier. Your life is just going to, and it's not going to,
Yeah, let's
not helpful.
Well, that's, what I'll share with you guys really quickly. I was in a very depressed and a very dark place after losing my kid, and I went through some very awful narcissistic abuse with my in-laws throughout that whole time we were pregnant. And what I'll share is when you sit in that anger, and I sat and marinated with it for a long time, and I will share with you, it eats away at you, and not in the good way.
Mm.
And so, what I want to share about acceptance is, and I know it's going to come across a little harsh because it did to me when it got told to me, acceptance is very important because you got to stop denying reality. That's the big one you got to learn is you got to stop denying reality. It is what it is, whether you like it or not, whether you agree to it or not. And that's a hard place to get to, but you don't have to do it right away. No one's going to force you to do it. Another thing that Carolyn said about, uh, not being in touch with her kid for 26 years. I can tell you right now that is a loss. It's not something that's not a loss. It is a loss, and it's going to be very different in a lot of ways because there's a lot of people that haven't experienced that or don't experience it. What I want to encourage you guys that are going through grief is the following, because it's another thing that I get driven nuts by in the grief communities, and I get driven nuts by it in society.
Mhm.
There's 8 billion people walking the planet, just to be put that in perspective, and we have 340 million people in our country in America alone. That is 340 different walks of life. That is 340 million different experiences every day. To say that you can grieve Chris's way or Carolyn's way or number 1,250,000's way
Yeah,
it's just
yeah,
it's just wrong. And so what I want to share with you guys, the reason we do all these podcasts and the why I do the show the way I do it on my own podcast is the following. It's through the storytelling of these people talking about their grief, talking about their experience, how they reacted to it, how they responded to it, what that outcome was, what they learned, how they did it. You're not going to be able to grieve the way I grieve. You're just not going to be able to. It's not the same experience. And rightfully so, it shouldn't be. It's going to be your experience, but it's through that storytelling that we can learn one or two things to help us find our own journey.
yeah,
And that's the power of your grief journey. So
yeah.
don't ever sell yourself short on your grief journey. Don't let people I always say grievers hate being fixed. I say that on purpose. We don't need to be fixed. We'll figure that out on our own. But
True.
hold space for people.
Mhm.
Sometimes you don't have to say anything. Sometimes one of my other podcasts gets said it. She's a chaplain at a church. She said, "Shut up and listen. That's all you have to do."
Yeah, yeah,
I said that's funny to hear a chaplain from a church say that, but
yeah.
it's funny.
It's all right.
But hold space for people. And by the way, I've talked to 96 people that have gone through very different and very worse grief stories than I have, and I'll be honest, I learned a lot from them. I
Mhm.
learned a lot I learned from one of my guests, by the way, whose father murdered his mother. I learned about forgiveness from that guy on a very deep level in a very different way than you'll hear about in society. And so that's where I give that example. You can always learn from people going through grief, no matter what the circumstance is. And
Yeah.
so be open. My grandfather always said, keep your eyes open and your ears listening. You'll never be surprised what you can learn from people.
Oh my God, that is so true. I got
So,
to write that one down too. Yeah, you're giving me all these great things. Keep your eyes open and your ears listening.
listening.
Isn't it interesting? We have two eyes, two ears, and one mouth. So
Yes.
shut up. Um, before we move on to the next part, I want to say something here that is so profound that, and especially for people out there who, if you just pay attention, if you just open your heart and just pay attention to someone else's energy, I guess is the best way to put it for me because I'm an energy person. But if you're just paying attention and you see that someone is not like bouncing through life, smiling, happy, whatever, and they're going through something, You can still do this with a stranger. It doesn't have to be with someone you know. You just say, hey, it looks like something's going on. Is there anything I can do for you? Is there something, and I saw another, these are the things I look at on Facebook because I can't go go look at the other stuff. But I saw this happen with this guy. Obviously, he was going through something, probably going through grief, something related to that. And someone came up to him and asked that question. And all he said was, and this was very brave, I need a hug. And this is a guy asking a guy. And the guy said,
Love
I
that.
need a hug. Ask for a hug if you need it. Because the more we hug, I mean, we're built on touch. That's our main feeling mechanism, or our main mechanism of all the things, the sight, the smell, the whatever. Touch is the most important one. Babies, if they're not touched when they are born, will prematurely also die from not being touched. They've done research on this stuff. So that is the most human, the most important human, what are these things called? Seeing, hearing, feeling, touching.
Oh, senses.
Senses. That's it. That's it. That's the most important human sense that we have is touch. At least that's the way I see it. So I hope that helped, because I think asking for a hug is hugely important. Because let me tell you something. I've had so many experiences in my life where I didn't ask. I wish somebody would just recognize that I was going through something and just offer a hug, and no one did. So I had to learn how to ask for a hug, and it helped. And all I had to do was cry it out, and then I was fine. That's my experience. But yeah, so just ask for help when you need it. So this is very interesting. I love this conversation. Okay, so before we wrap up, I'd love to finish with these questions that I ask all of my guests so our listeners can hear a little more of your personal wisdom and insight. Not that he hasn't already given a lot of good personal wisdom and insight. However, here's the first one. If you could offer one piece of advice to someone just starting their healing journey, what would it be?
Oh, that's a tough one for me. This is what I'm going to say to you guys that are going through grief in the very early stages of things. You are not broken. You
Hmm.
do not need to be fixed. There is nothing wrong with you at all. And I'm actually going to repeat that so you hear it very clearly. You are not broken. You do not need to be fixed. And there is nothing wrong with you. You are exactly where you need to be right now on your journey. And I want you to honor that journey as you take it every step by step, day by day, hour by hour, whatever that comes. I want you to know that.
Oh my God. Now I know why I was so excited about having you on here. Okay, thank you. Whew. Um, how do you define awakening?
Awakening is going to be a moment that you cannot predict when it's going to come. For me, that happened, I think, probably 3 months after I lost my son. I had a big moment of awakening. That's a story for another day on a podcast. But I will share, by the way, when you have your awakening, it's not going to come in the form of anger or heavy sadness or heavy grief or heavy emotion. It's not going to come that way. You're going to have this big bout of clarity come through your head, and it's going to be really, really clear. And it's going to be a day where this is not everybody's thoughts, beliefs, or things that you've learned from other people. It's going to come from you inside your soul, and it's going to come right here,
Mm.
crystal clear. And you will know when it happens because it will scare you. I will tell you that. You'll have this like, whoa, what did I
What
just
just
feel?
happened?
Like,
Yes,
what just
yes,
happened?
yes. Oh my
That moment will happen for you guys. Please know, by the way, it's okay if you get freaked out by that. I certainly did, but I want you to know the following. After you have that moment, do not forget it. Write it down. Do something to remember it because that's a turning point in your healing journey, and it's very, very important for you to remember it.
God.
Because that feeling, by the way, that is how you know you're on your healing journey. And that is how you know you can take the next step forward with confidence, with acceptance, and with just being who you are. And by the way, that's going to be the moment you let go of all your conditioning. That's going to go all out the window.
Oh yeah, I love that.
So
Yes. And by the
that, that's
way, well,
that's
go ahead.
awakening.
Yes.
I'm just saying that's
That's
awakening. That's
awakening.
how it works.
Yes, 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 yes. But, and I wanted to share something because he mentioned freaking out. It does happen. It can happen. It may not happen with everybody, but if you do freak out, just sit with it and breathe, because it's going to be this moment where you're like, what just happened? That's not normal. What's happening here? And it might make you, I mean, it did happen like that with me, and it made me cry. And I'm like, why am I crying? You know, it's like this whole thing where you don't recognize it, so you don't understand what's happening. So just breathe. Just accept it and breathe, and just keep going and keep going and keep going and keep going, because you have the potential to do that. Wow. Okay, what do you believe soul divinity is?
Oh, that's a powerful question. Um, I'm gonna try to say that as short as I can. I'm a very spiritual person. I'm just going to put that out here. And I do believe that before we come to this planet as the people you see in front of us and who you see in the mirror, this life has already been planned out for you. What happens in your life and is what's going to happen in your life has already been planned, and it's already going to happen. And so that's not to say you're going to enjoy every moment of it, because I certainly didn't. And I'll share, you probably have had moments you didn't align with, and that's fine. What I will say about soul divinity is that this journey that we're on with our soul is to grow, to learn, and evolve. So everything you run into in life, and I try to share this in the grief community when it's the appropriate, everything that happens to you is always a gift, it's a lesson, or it's a blessing. It's one of the three. And uh, I can share with you guys, by the way, losing my child, yes, that was tragic. It was hard. It was the worst experience of my life. I'll be dead honest with you. That child was the biggest gift and blessing I ever got. And the lessons that came out of him, and they still come out today, are
Mhm.
putting me on a path of serving people at a higher level that I never thought would be possible. So I want you to stay open-minded to soul divinity and that purpose. Your soul has a big, big purpose, and it's through grief, by the way, getting rid of that conditioning crap and stepping into who you're supposed to become from here, not out here, in here. That when you find your soul purpose, I promise you,
Yeah.
everything in life will fall in line for you the way it
Oh
needs to
my.
fall in line, and you will never have to fight another day. You won't.
Oh wow. I'm speechless. I can't be speechless right now. Hold on a minute. Okay, so, and I have to add to that, because things will still come up, but now you'll know how to work with it. Once you get through that initial stuff and you work through the grief and you do all that stuff, things get easier and easier and easier, because you've already done it. You've already worked through it. You've gone through the worst of it. And now things are, it's like, all right, bring it, you know. Careful when you say that though. Be careful what you ask for.
Well,
So go ahead.
well, I just want to say about it being easy, I'm going to tell you guys this. It took me 2.5 years to get on podcasts and share my story and be comfortable with it. It took me a
Yeah.
long time to get there.
Yeah.
Um, when I say the word, like people say this common phrase, does it get easier? It does, but it's a long time to get there. This is not going to be you wake up one day and all of a sudden life's, unicorn, rainbow, and glitter. That's not what's going to happen.
Yeah.
But over time, the emotional intensity comes down. You know how to deal with things. I will say the following to you guys, that after losing a kid, 99% of things I think are problems are not problems. They're not. I've dealt with the worst. So these things are, I now have this vision of, okay, this is easy. This is manageable. I can deal with this. I want to encourage you guys that your grief that you go through, by the way, and I don't care what grief you went through, because I think all of it's very, very hard for everybody in a certain way. Be kind to yourself with that and understand that you've now faced the worst. You've faced the worst now. So now whatever does come along, by the way, I want you to reframe easy into the following. I now have the strength to take these things on. They are not as difficult as they used to be for me, because I now have the tools, the knowledge, and the experience to handle this. And I can be confident in who I am to take all this on. So I want to reframe the word easy into that, because that's a little more user friendly and a little
Yeah.
more, I can wrap my head around that.
Thank you. Thank you. I wish I knew all this stuff when I was your age. Because it took me an extra 20 years to figure all this stuff out. Yeah. So, how can people get in touch with you?
If you guys want to get in touch with me, I'm very, very active on Facebook. My username on there is the Chris Mamone, because I can't change it right now. You guys can also find me at my new website, empowergriefjourney.com. You guys can find my backstory in a little more detail. You guys can find my podcast, that I've interviewed many, many people, including Tony, on there. And On top of that, if you guys want to connect with me on Instagram and TikTok, I have lots of videos there to help you guys learn how to navigate grief. I will say, if you guys follow me, please engage and interact. I do not mind people jumping on there and sharing your grief story, your experience, because what I share with all my podcast guests and I share it with people I run into, my coaching clients, you guys think you learn from me, I learn from you. It's a two-way street. So don't be shy about interacting and engaging with me, because you guys have the power, just like I do, to make this world a better place. And it all starts with us collaborating.
Oh my God, this is getting more and more exciting by the minute. Is there anything else, even though you already done it, is there anything else you would like to share with the audience before we wrap up?
I've said quite a bit in the
Yeah,
podcast today. I hope that was very helpful, whatever I shared today on the podcast. My only other thing I can share with you guys that I want you to really take to heart, if you're in the throes of grief or if you feel stuck in grief, because I was there for quite a while, or maybe you're very angry with grief, be kind to yourself. That's the biggest thing I could ever share to you. And when I say be kind to yourself, quiet down the negative voice in your head, quiet that thing down. Don't diminish your experience. I have found journaling to be very helpful, writing very helpful.
yeah,
Write down your thoughts, write down your feelings, write down your emotions. And my other one that I'll leave it with here too is find your community of people, find the safe people that hold space for you, that listen to you, that understand you. If there's people out there being insensitive or telling you to put a mask on, those are not your people. You need to distance yourself from that. I will tell you, they will set you back on healing a very long time. If you lost a kid like I did, go to the
yeah,
lost community of parents. You will find so much love and kindness over there. It's not even funny. If you've lost a parent, find a group on Facebook. You will find your tribe, find your support.
mhm,
I'm also setting up group coaching on my website right now for that same reason, because I want people to have a safe place to feel seen, heard, and understood. So please find people that make you feel that way. This world is hard enough as it is. We don't need to make it harder, is what I like to say.
yeah, yeah.
So go find your tribe, and if you don't find them, come find me because I'll be your tribe. So
I hear you there. And I wanted to add something too, because when you, because you experience this, blood is not always thicker than water. If you're experiencing your family treating you in a way that you don't deserve, especially while you're going through grief, don't go to them. Find someone else. That's a
yep,
good one. Oh, I can't.
that's that's sorry, you're bringing all this out in me
I know,
today.
I told you this was going to
You
happen.
know,
Yeah.
I'm gonna share this with you guys about family. You know, family's always gonna be there,
Yeah.
okay?
Yeah.
But I'm gonna share with you guys a David Goggins quote that'll help out in grief. It's a personal motivation thing, but it lays in grief really well.
Who?
David Goggins.
David
He's
Goggins.
a ultra marathon ex-Navy SEAL guy.
Okay.
Wrote a beautiful book called Can't Hurt Me. It's about grief. Um, he made a video one time that really hit me when I was going through hard times with my in-laws, and he said that those that criticize others really have something going on with themselves. And what I want you guys to take away, by the way, because family is very tricky. Sometimes you have to go no contact with certain family members. Sometimes you have to. And that's very unfortunate. It's a very, very hard decision. I want you guys to know that 9 times out of 10, it's got nothing to do with you. It's the fact that you got to realize that your family in a different generation was brought up in a different mindset, a different way of life, a different way of beliefs and convictions. They may not always align with you, and they may, by the way, sometimes hurt your feelings. Now, what I want you to take away is my mindset I've adapted after going through a lot of anger and dealing with certain things with that.
Hmm.
Those are projections that have nothing to do with me. It has everything to do on the other side of the fence. And when you can get to that place, by the way, of understanding that, you will not be so upset with those people. You will understand that they are who they are. You can't change it. You can't
Yep.
work it out. Sometimes you can't get there. And I want you to know that as hard as it is, walk the other direction for a minute, create that separation of space because you got to heal yourself in a lot of ways to get that thing back. And sometimes that'll work out, sometimes it won't. But I want you to know that your life journey is your journey. And I'm going to be honest, I've had a lot of anger for many years, going through a lot of grief that I went through. I'm going to tell you guys to save you guys years off your life. Don't waste your time like I did with that. Don't. I want you to take your life, walk the direction you need to walk, heal yourself the way you need to
Yes,
heal.
yes, yes, yes.
And be that person, man. I want you guys to be that because I can tell you I wasted 10 years of my life in a lot of ways being angry about things. And I wish I had smartened up to who I am today, telling you guys this to walk the other direction. So I want you to save years off your life because I already paid the debt for you.
Yeah.
Um, I want you to I want you to save your life years off your life and really think about what's best for me. How do I need to grieve and heal? What are the inner demons I got to fight and face to get myself in a better place? Go work on you because when you do that, man, you're gonna have the same gift I have, the same gift Carolyn has. We all have the power to do this, but I want you to take it. I want you to run with it because the world freaking needs you.
Yeah,
Okay?
that's right. Yeah. Wait, I don't want to drop my mic. I'll break it.
Yeah.
No, I wanted to say because yes, I had to do a permanent walk away from a family member because of some things that were being said. And I was like, if I hadn't walked away, this was maybe about a year and a half ago. If I hadn't have done that, we would not be sitting here right now having that conversation because I would still be in the same place I was in when I was fighting that whole thing within myself. So thank you for sharing that because that is 1000% true. I'm all behind that. And I just want to share, and I'll be sharing this later too before I close out. Just in a little while, Chris and I will be on his podcast talking about stuff over there. So you get two podcasts with us. Isn't that fun?
Love it.
So, all right. So, Chris, thank you so much for sharing such a vulnerable and powerful journey with us today. I mean, grief is something so many of us are told to hide, to push down, or to get over. But what you've shown is that grief, when honored, can actually lead us into deeper truth, resilience, and even empowerment. In my own work, I call this giving grief a voice. Because when we allow our grief to be seen and heard, we open the door to transformation. For those listening, may this be a reminder that your grief matters, your voice matters, and you don't have to walk the path alone. Thank you for being here with us on Awakening Soul Divinity. Thank you for being here. Click on one of the videos below to keep going on your healing journey. And don't forget to subscribe.